Hi there, I'm Marcel and we're gonna do a small tutorial of how to paint a small tomato. This board is squared, 18 by 18 centimeters, roughly that size. Again, it's a board, so it is handy to come by. You can buy it in a construction store. I made a small grid on it. This is the tomato. You see this picture has some kind of atmosphere in it, and obviously the iPod makes it possible to tune the colors a bit, which benefits the atmosphere. And then it's just a matter of getting that atmosphere on the board. Now, if I prime this, and you can see on the board that it has a small little structure in it. Now this is being done by sanding the panel once, and then I basically give it a layer or 2-3 primer on it, and I basically do this on a roller, and by this roller I make sure that the paint is not too much, so it gives a small structure. Now in the movie, or at least I'm recording this, you cannot see it that clearly, but there is a really small structure in it. Now if we look at a tomato, and in this tomato specifically, you can see there's a lot of things happening, from the darks to the lights, orange, deep red, the darker deep red. Now concerning the composition, I already made some grid counting for me to exactly place where the tomato is going to be. Now, as you can see on the board, I made some numbers for it. So, and the arrows just exactly point where I should start with a tomato. And from that point on, I know exactly where the tomato is going to end and where it begins from a compositional standpoint. So the drawing is ready, and that means I'm going to concentrate on the color mixing for the first layer. And the color mixing, which I did already obviously, you can see here the color matches up with the orange, and it is such a big difference from the middle of the tomato where it is really dark red. As you can see here, which is pretty difficult to see. Now obviously the whole color mixing is, and especially when you just started out, it is a process that takes some time because your eyes need to get adjusted to it. And the more you do it, the more the differences you will see in the colors. For instance, here it's a pretty more black red. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but the more you train your eyes, specifically in this tomato, the more color changes you will see, and that process simply takes time. Now another thing to mention, as you can see, that I'm mixing my colors from an iPod, which is not ideal, because if you paint in real life, so you put a still life on the table, some objects, green or pots and pans or whatever, you can mix the colors from real life, and that's obviously better because from the iPod the light is coming towards you, and when you place items on a table, the light is going to be reflected more obviously. But for those who have also a small room like me, I'm using the iPod. So I'm making a picture and I'm using the iPod. Now I usually mix my colors, put some on the palette knife, go over the iPod and see if it matches. Now, then I pull my palette knife away from the iPod and match my colors again. This way I have a pretty good understanding if my colors are matching or not. When I start the first layer, I'm going to make sure those colors are opaque, so they have strong coverage. And mostly I use the same kind of tubes for the first layer and another kind of tubes for the second layer. So I have mostly a kind of a red for the first layer and a kind of a different red for the second layer. And the second layer obviously is going to be a bit more transparent. Now the first layer is finished. As you can see, there's still some board shining through, but yeah, that's okay. Now I'm going to leave this to dry mostly for 2 days, but this kind of red what you see probably is going to take 3 days to dry. And with drying I mean hand touch. this painting is almost finished. Just checking out some last details. Another thing to mention, outside all the discussed color matching and boarding, the best practice, obviously, and starting out with, is how to draw. Drawing is especially important in form and getting your values right. So color matching is obviously all about the use, but drawing obviously is one of the things that you should start with. So I hope you enjoyed this small little tutorial, not too much in depth. Just thing to remember is all things comes with practice. You start out with drawing, and then you do your color matching. Those are actually the first steps you should take. And when you have a kind of pretty good hang in it, start to paint. And from there on, never stop. So I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial, and see you on the next one.